All right, welcome back to the Meat Dudes. In today's episode, it's really all about education. It's not about sides, it's not about hype, it's not about this country versus that country. I talk a lot about Wagyu beef on this podcast, obviously. And one question I get a lot is why do I see so much Australian Wagyu in the US and what makes it different? So that's really what today is about. It's about learning. So I got the pleasure to sit down and talk with Jessie Chiconi of 4C Consultancy. Now, Jessie travels to the U.S., Australia. She's from Australia. She's very big in the Australian industry. I met her at the American Wagyu Association conference last year, and she's really an expert in Wagyu beef and Australian Wagyu beef. So it was really fun to kind of deep dive with her, learn a little bit more about the Australian market and why export plays such a big role, because I hear that a lot. There's a lot of Australian Wagyu beef in the United States. So it was really nice to sit down with her, get some kind of clear answers on that process, and really understand that we're on the same team, and the more people eating Wagyu, the better. And we're really fighting against other proteins, and that's what I really liked. What came out of that conversation. So I really hope you stick around and listen to this one. It's really great. I don't talk a lot about Australian Wagyu, so I was really excited to kind of learn a little bit more and deep dive into that. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Welcome to the Meat Dudes. I'm your host, Evan, and today I am with Jessie Chiconi of 4C Consultancy, and I'm super excited that you're here today, Jessie, because I talk a lot about Wagyu beef and the U.S. and Japan, and there's a whole other area that produces a lot of Wagyu beef that I know about, but I've never had anybody come on the podcast and talk about, and that's Australia. So you're here to talk about some Australian Wagyu beef. You're going to be a friend of the show and our Australian Wagyu beef expert. And I'm so happy that you're here, and welcome to the Meat Dudes.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks, Evan. Happy to be here too, and very excited to delve into Australian Wagyu production. It's quite the industry.
That's what I'm hearing, and we're here in the U.S. and we talk a lot. Like I said, we talk a lot about American Wagyu, and we love it. But I do want to just learn more about Australia, because there isn't, like I said, I haven't had anybody on here talking about it. And so, where did it start, and where is it now as far as kind of like the global market for Australian Wagyu? What's going on?
Okay, well, there are actually quite a number of different stories about how Wagyu came into Australia. There's lots of there's a few things about mafia being involved, and it's pretty interesting. But obviously, all the genetics that we utilize here in Australia came to America first. So they were all imported into America first, and then were imported into Australia. So there were definitely a lot of amazing pioneers early in the day, the likes of David Blackmore and Simon Coates, Wally Ray. They were some of the main instigators to bring Wagyu into Australia, and it's a really, really interesting thing that they did that, because even up until 10 to 15 years ago, the entire Australian beef production system couldn't stand Wagyu. Like it was almost a bad word. And I suppose it was a bit like when Brahmins first came onto the scene in Australia too. It took a long time for people to utilise them and understand their capacities, whereas same thing happened with Australia. Like they were here for a good 30 years before people actually jumped on the bandwagon and realised that it's not just that what they look like. There's the fertility and the meat quality, and they're so versatile and resilient. So there were so many aspects of Wagyu that weren't initially taken on board by a lot of Australian producers. But when they turned the corner, that's when it exploded. And yeah, it's obviously Australia is now the largest production system of Wagyu outside of Japan.
I hear so much about it, and a lot of exporting too, right? Like why is Australia so good at exporting Wagyu beef?
The beef or the genetics, do you believe?
I think the beef, because I see it a lot in the United States, right? And so do they have an advantage? Is it more of a more open areas to graze, and can they produce more, or what makes them really experts in exporting?
Well, it's interesting. Some of the companies that I've worked for generally say that we export 80% of our Wagyu, so only 20 of it stays domestic. Which generally the majority of our Wagyu that is exported to America is your ground beef, and your trim, but obviously then there's also some pretty handy stuff that gets sent away as well. But I think, yeah, I think that really the reason for it is just because our supply and demand over here, with our vast numbers. I think, I went to a meat and livestock summit back in, I think it was August, and we've got 276,000 Wagyu on feed in Australia at the moment, which is at its highest point. But that's what happens with our markets then, is because we've got such large numbers, our markets actually drop. So that's why I think we have to export so much, is because it's not viable for us to sell here in Australia because we have so many of them.
Yeah, well, obviously. Well, you travel a lot back and forth to the U.S. and Australia. So, what, in your opinion, how is Australian Wagyu and American Wagyu different and similar? Like, how do they kind of match up?
Well, okay, so Australia obviously being such a large production model, we've got so many numbers, we've got so much carcass data, and we are nerds when it comes to technology and beef production. It's just the software platforms and the technology that we utilize, not just through carcass data and imagery that way, but lifetime performance. Like, I mean, we have scales out out in the paddock to get daily weights on cattle instead of having to bring them into the cattle yards. And all of that information is then put into another production system or another analytical system for us to utilize to try and capture every single ounce of information we can get on these animals over their entire lifetimes, and then quantifiably analyze all of that through the correlation of everything. You need to know everything: genetics, feed capacity, like we're getting down into like soil profiles and nutritional grass value, and what their lifetime projection's going to be, even in the last trimester of being in utero. I mean, this is we get pretty hectic with it, but it's I think that's where Australia is, that we really adapted to Wagyu well, is because we are such innovators, and we adjust quickly. I mean, we have to adjust. So I think with Australian Wagyu production, I've been in it now for 12 years. I initially did not like it at all. I had the blinkers on for a fair while. I was a Charolais producer, and we're going into Angus production. I was not impressed when they started coming onto the scene. I thought, these ugly little things, but they're certainly not ugly now.
Not ugly when they're hanging.
Uh, exactly, and that's it. Once you've got their shirts off, it doesn't matter what they look like on the ground. But no, they're a fascinating breed, and they just absolutely captivated me. There's not a breed I've come across that has the capacity that Wagyu has, and it's going to always be, as my dad used to say, the beef industry is a wheel. Like, who's on top? Almost like Game of Thrones. Like, who's the one going to be on top next, and it just keeps turning. But Wagyu will always be on top. There's no going away from that.
It's funny, like, yeah, I look at Japan, and that's the homeland. That's the number one. If you want to say Wagyu, like, that's the number one spot, obviously. And then, the US and Australia are kind of like that two and three, battling it out. Not really battling. That's a bad term. But as far as the market goes, I feel like Australia and the US are kind of right there in second place.
Yes.
And so, being similar, being different. What about like the flavor profiles? Like, why is it that something in Australia, if we're using the same genetics that came from Japan, why is it that something in Australia might taste different than something in the US?
Well, that's a really interesting point. It's a conversation I've had repeatedly in the last few months, actually. So there is a common conception over here in Australia which I disagree with wholeheartedly, is that we're 10 to 15 years ahead genetically. I think with AI, ET, and IVF, with our artificial reproduction, America has caught up very quickly. Obviously, not on the same scale as we are, because when like my operation had 5,000 head. Very rarely do I go anywhere in America that has more than 300 head. I mean, I think the average ranch in America with cattle is a 47 head of Wagyu. That's what the average is, which to me is not even a paddock. So it's interesting that when we've got Australian production with all of our data captured and all of our beautiful meat, and our consistency that we've got in Wagyu, I think that's where the window of opportunity now is for that collaboration between Australia and America, because I believe America is just on the precipice of exploding. And once an F1 market is initiated and really hits the market and should be presented better, probably, I believe, from a meat perspective in America. We can't compete against USDA Prime. That's just garbage. We need to have a different metric and modelling system to promote Wagyu, because you cannot compete against Angus and Charolais. Wagyu are completely. I'm still not convinced they're actually cattle. I think there's something else completely, but because of the flavour profile, and I think at the end of the day, that's what sets Wagyu apart from every other bovine is the flavour. And if we're not focusing on flavour, well then you may as well just have Angus or Charolais.
Well, you brought up a good point though with the grading system. I have a huge issue with the USDA grading system here. Right? Wagyu, it just does not benefit Wagyu beef at all. But in Australia, if you talk about your grading system, kind of explain what it is. Once we know what it is, like you can really tell that it actually really helps helps people choose which type of Wagyu they would want. I feel like it explains it better, explains the different classes, it explains the different, it's kind of like the BMS scale, right? I mean, if we just had one thing that it's like, we just have prime here in the US, but like, if we could say, well, it's actually a 6 to 7, or it's a 7 to 8, or it's 8 to, you can actually like figure out what you like, along those lines, and it can, you can track it a little bit better. But so what is the Australian grading system?
Well, it's obviously developing all the time too, because we are actually bypassing the model. So initially it was all Oz meat, like years 0 to 9. But then it got to a point a few years ago. Then they became 9 pluses. But a 9 plus is when the MIJ camera started coming into it, and 9 plus could mean anything from a 12 to a 17. You don't know what that is. So there was a lot of data was missed during that time because there was no metric to be able to capture it, I suppose. So they just put it into a lump category as such, and it's a shame because some of that information would have been very, very important to the breed moving forward. But that's essentially moved forward now. Our grading systems are still 9 plus. We don't, but they changed it now to like our DMPs. So you can go to a restaurant, they'll still say 9 or 9 plus, but for us to actually utilize grading with their MIJ camera, it could go. I've heard rumors of a marble score 22, which I don't know whether I'd actually want to eat. I think that it's more intramuscular fat than muscle fiber. But no, I think that's Australia anyway, and it's going to continue to have to develop. But the big thing that I think Australia needs to move forward now is even like with our grading systems, and it's great to have the biggest eye muscle area and the most marbling in the world, but if it doesn't taste good, no one's going to continually keep coming back and paying a premium for it. And flavour a lot of it is derived from maternal lines in Wagyu, so your genetics play a massive role in that, and also obviously your feed rations also do as well. So I think there needs to be a little bit more emphasis placed on flavour, more so than just terminal traits.
Then how do you place an emphasis on that? How do you get good flavor out of each cow?
Well, that's the next issue too. Like I mean, I know how to breed for flavour through genetics, but and then obviously different feed rations. There are probably the biggest thing that needs to be addressed is that a lot of people, when they're breeding Wagyu, focus too much on sires. The sires are important, obviously, and they're easier to correlate because they've got more progeny per year than a cow can. But the emphasis on flavour profile particularly needs to be really heavily viewed through a maternal line. It's all about the girls. And I say this I'm very, very good friends with the CEO of Angus Australia, and I said to him the other day, Wagyu are women, Angus are men. So it all comes down to the girls in the end, and that when there's too much emphasis placed on the size, we forget about maintaining a balance in our maternal lines, and that's where the flavor fails. Mhm.
Balance. I mean, that's a big thing we talk about with Wagyu a lot is I always kind of bring up the question, like, what is quality? Is it 100% fat? Is that going to be the best thing? No, that's not. People don't want that. Do they want 50? Well, maybe a little bit, a few people. Do they want that, 40 or 30 to 40? That's a pretty good range. Some people like 20 to 30, but it really is about the flavor at the end of the day. You're right. People don't care what it looks like if it tastes like junk.
Actually, interesting comment my father said to me the other day. He's in his early 70s, and does not like Wagyu because it took me away from him. He wanted me to take over the Charolais stud, and now he's got a set against them. But he loves eating them. And anyway, he said to me the other day that he finally found his marble score. And I said, that's interesting. I said, what other breed is there that you find out what grading you like? And I said, what is that? And he said, it's a 7. He said, 9's far too rich. And yeah, he said, I like a 7. And I said, and this is what I'm trying to push a little bit with my consultancy as well, is there's this ideology of paddock to plate or paddock to pasture. That thing, it has to be reversed. It's been annoying me for years, like this whole ideology of paddock to plate. It shouldn't be that. It should be pallet to paddock. So we have to understand consumer satisfactions and what consumer nuances are for us to adjust our breeding programs to ensure that consistency and quality coming through. So I want to reverse it. We need to know what the consumer wants so we can breed that for them.
I mean, that's ultimately what it's all about. And that's why, having all this information and getting people's feedback about it is so important, instead of just trying to raise the most insanely marbled beef. Because most of the time people don't, like I said, people don't want that every single night. And that's why I think the Australia and the US are so alike, right? Because we have full blood, purebred, F1 cross. It's kind of made that a little bit of a thing, right? I mean, they have that in Japan as well, but everybody, really likes the top of the line, the full blood A5. That's what you think of when you think of Japan. The U.S. and Australia are very similar in that route, because we really focused on the crosses, because I think that's what people generally like. The consumers generally like that cross. Now, full blood is awesome, and you get a great full blood out there. It tastes amazing. I might want to share it with a few people, but I think at the end of the day, a lot of people really kind of aren't there yet. I mean, the main consumers, right? They're not there yet. They're not looking for that on a daily basis. Would you agree?
Absolutely, definitely. Another thing I find really interesting too is my darling children, who are 12 and 10, have grown up on Wagyu. So 3 times a day eat Wagyu, and it's funny now to watch them when we go to restaurants that they've almost become like these little Wagyu connoisseurs, and it's amazing. Like, I literally get the kids to taste it first, and they'll come back, and it's nearly getting to a point, because they have had so much of it, that they can actually taste Irishi or a Mishifuku line. Like, they're getting to a point where they can actually taste the bloodlines. It's really interesting, but yeah, but I find it fascinating too that they can actually eat a lot more of it than most other people can. Like, it is so rich and so filling that you don't need as much of it, sort of thing. Whereas these kids can sit down and eat a marble score 9 sirloin to themselves.
Really?
So I don't. It's almost like some epigenetics has come into play here, that they've grown up with it and they've adjusted and evolved.
Oh my gosh, I love the next generation of Wagyu eaters. Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
we'll need all that full blood here soon. Awesome. Uh,
Yeah.
my kid eats so much Wagyu. Made Tyler, like his kid too. They're just like these spoiled Wagyu kids, we call them. They're just like, they go out to a steakhouse and I'm like, don't even order a steak, babe. Like, you're not
No,
gonna, you know.
no, that's what my kids do too. As we go out for dinner and they won't order steak, I was like, give me the chicken. I'm not.
Yeah, I'm like,
You
yeah,
get too disappointed.
right. Oh man. Well, with Australia having so much of the genetics as well, and the scalability is what it really sounds like. The consistency and scalability. Like, I guess when I think of like Australian Wagyu, I think of that, like that scalability. They scaled it very, very quickly. And with the US, I think of it as like super boutique-y, like all over, and they have local farms. Like you said, there's only 47, average 47 head in a lot of places. So it's very boutique-y and about like the brand and everything like that. So how can we work together? Because in my eyes, more people eating Wagyu beef, the better, right? Like, I always want to support American ranchers. Of course, that's where I'm in America right now. I want to support them. I don't want, you know, some people will say, "Oh, Australia is coming in here," and blah 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 blah. I'm like, well, let's talk about how we can collaborate and make Wagyu a better product so more people eat it. I think that's the goal at the end of the day. So, in your eyes, how do you see that? How do you see like a collaboration happening with Australia and the U.S.?
I think probably the biggest thing is, as I've been saying, we do have so much data to the point now that the Australian Association have foregone EBVs, estimated breed plan values, and now created our own metrics. So we've got Wagyu breeding values now, so the WBVs, which we might need some support sessions on how to get that out of our mouths now instead of EBVs. Now we've got to say WBVs. But it's essentially it's very, very similar, but we're just not being compared to against other breeds anymore. So I think it's a fantastic new tool and benchmarking process for us, for the world, really, because I mean, a lot of the American producers are utilizing Australian WBVs now. When it comes into effect in February. But it's a really good thing, I believe, for the industry on a global level, because it's essentially benchmarking all of Wagyu production globally. So it's and not comparing it against other breeds. So I kind of feel like that technology and our vision and innovation in Wagyu is something that I think is really, really good for both of us, both Australia, on both sides of the puddle, as I often say. I think that side of things is really, really important. What I see in America, where Australia can help, is and I need to be diplomatic and about this, but I think there are a few things over in America that if the even just the cattlemanship side of things, like there was, don't get me wrong, not all of them, but I had a question when I was in Idaho in September from a gentleman asked me, he said, "Do you think there's any value in having scales on our head bale, on our crush?" That's 101. How have you gone through life without scales on your head bale? Like, I mean, that's bare minimum. You have to have that. So there are a few things in that regard, I suppose, from cattlemanship and animal husbandry that Australia could probably help. Not saying that there's anything wrong with it, but probably just more efficiency. That efficiency side of things. I mean, the genetics on both sides are very similar. Like, I mean, we do have such a small gene pool anyway. It's just the fact that we've got more numbers to prove out the lines. That's all it is. America has the opportunity, as you say, with these niche markets and little boutique brands as such. And to me, that's where we find the consumer satisfaction levels, because it's a fully integrated, vertically integrated business model. You're hearing from your customers what you liked about the beef and what you didn't. So I think there's so many things that we could collaborate on, and this whole concept of us being in competition, and it's a conversation that's happening on both sides of the puddle again. There are people in Australia who are concerned about America taking off and leaving us behind, but it's not that. I think the thing is, it's going to happen regardless, and when it does happen, we may as well all be on the front foot together and ensure the betterment of the breed on a global scale. Work together.
No, absolutely, and work together with the educational piece. If we can all start speaking the same language as far as what the F1 cross means and what this means and what that means, I think that that helps with the consumer, because that's always been one of my things. I'm like, man, I'll say American Wagyu, and somebody will say, "Oh, that means F1 cross." I'm like, okay, well, I think it means just something raised in America. But the fact that we are all saying something different just means that we're all still not on the same page, and therefore the consumer is not benefiting, because they're gonna if we don't know, then they don't know. They have no idea what the heck any of this means. And if we're still talking about it and figuring it out, then they're a long ways away. So
And exactly. And there's so much education that has to be done in the retail sector, the food sector. I've seen it here, I've seen it over there. I had an argument the other day with a butcher shop here in Australia at $80 a kilo. So whatever that works out in conversion, $80 a kilo. And they had it advertised as a marble score 7. It wouldn't have been a 2. I wasn't convinced it was even Wagyu. And so I decided to ask the butcher, where do you source your Wagyu from? And he rattled something off that I'd never heard of. And then I said, so is this an F1 or a full blood? And he said, F1 is full blood. And I was like, oh, don't do that to me. Anyway, so I got rather vocal. Yeah, and that's where our consumers are getting their base information from, because there is no feedback loop back to a producer. When we're the ones that are jumping through all the hoops to get it, quality assurance and the standards and everything to get it through. And once that hide comes off and it goes into retail, nobody follows through, and nobody educates the consumer or the public. And we work so hard and have all of this technology, and it's very costly to raise Wagyu, hence the reason why it's expensive as well. And then it finally gets on a plate and people don't even know what they've got.
yeah, well, what's the solution? What besides consumer education, which we just will continuously do? What does Australia do anything different from the U.S. as far as that goes? Like making sure that people know it's from this place or that it's graded this. I mean, how do they do it differently?
Nothing. And literally, it's the same thing here, and it's such a disappointment from other industry bodies that we've got here, that it's essentially been left by the wayside, and it's something that should have been addressed 20 years ago. It's this and that the divide that we're getting between a consumer now and a producer is getting so vast, and I really don't know how we bridge the gap, how we close this now, because obviously there's activists and people believe that we do the wrong thing in beef production. There's lots of that sides of things too, let alone just even being able to educate the consumer. So I don't know. We need to be able to find a voice that can speak both languages and get it out there, because the way it's tracking at the moment, we're not going to have any progress.
Yeah, it's just that transparency. I mean, it's hard. That's the hardest thing that I think that any new industry is gonna deal with until we can get I think in the U.S. and like it's gonna be about the farms. Oh, this came from X farm over here. That's a reputable farm. We know that because it's out there. They've got a great brand. But it's just that transparency is really hard right now, and that's what a lot of the feedback that we get on social media. We post videos is that that's not real. I've had it. It was terrible. Went over there. They didn't even know what it was. And I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, I guess because there's no real transparency yet and verification yet, and it's coming. Hopefully, we can it can get out here really fast, and we can start to verify things a little bit better, and the consumer can start to see things a little bit better. But until then, it's just kind of like you got to like see it and hope
Yeah.
that your butcher knows enough. So what are some questions maybe that you ask when you go to a butcher shop? What's the first thing you ask if you go to a new butcher shop and you see Wagyu?
Actually did this the other day. I was told to go and have a look at one in Toowoomba here, and I was actually quite impressed with the marble score. And the first question I asked was, do you have another cut? Is there another sirloin here that I can see? And they did, fortunately, this time, and you could see it as the whole cut instead of just the steaks that have already been prepared.
What are you looking for with that?
I look for fineness. Fineness is key. Like, I mean, when you're looking at Wagyu, a lot. It's happening a lot in Australia at the moment. I believe it's because of the emphasis placed on us for marble score, eye muscle, hot carcass weight, that the fineness of Wagyu marbling has been left by the wayside a little bit. And when you start seeing those streaks, like that dispersion of flavour is being held in a capacity that it's not being able to spread throughout the entire steak. So you're not getting a consistent bite or flavour profile the whole way through that steak. So whenever I look at WAG, it's almost like if I can imagine, getting a syringe and putting a little deposit in each muscle fiber, sort of thing. So it's got to be like, my mentor Ken Kursawatsu in Canada is like, it's got to be like snow. You can't have streaks. You've got to have snow.
Yeah. Yeah. So you look for kind of just the streakiest spider web, kind of flaky.
The more even the distribution of fat, that's what I look for. It's yeah, you can't have big globlets of fat running through somewhere, because where the flavor is in that fineness. And there's definitely prefectural lines that promote fineness as well.
Absolutely. What's another thing you look for or you ask right when you walk into that butcher shop?
Generally, one of the main things is I ask is, where does it come from? Because I am very fortunate, with my business, that I have access to a lot of people's genetic capacities, and I know particularly which bloodlines have better flavor profiles. So yeah, if I go in, for instance, yeah, if someone says that this is from Stanbroke, I would buy it in a heartbeat. Same as Mayora. Like, I mean, you can't get any better than Mayora. But yeah, no, I think it's that's probably the big thing I ask is, yeah, where does it come from? And if it's something that I don't know, I'll be hesitant to take it because it's too expensive to be disappointed.
I agree. And that's absolutely you're right. That's the first thing that we do too, just to see like when someone comes in our butcher shop and they ask us that, I'm like, oh, let's go. I'm so ready. But I
Yes,
want to I want to talk to you about it, and I want to see, are these people excited about it? Especially if it's Wagyu and that it's a cool butcher shop. I want them to be like excited about it and understand more things, with the person working behind the scenes to be, telling me about it and tell me where it comes from and what, like, I kind of like to see the information that they give me right out the gate. That usually, makes sure that I understand at least that they know what they're talking about and that, it probably is Wagyu because
yes.
that's just the biggest thing, right? Is people will claim it is and it's not. And that's where if one person hears that for the rest of their life, they're like, oh, I'm staying away from Wagyu because it was fake, and you're like, geez, just because
It
someone
does.
told me that,
It ruins the exclusivity of the name, and I mean, and in turn ruins their own reputation. Because I mean, if you've got good Wagyu, and then don't get me wrong, there's some pretty ordinary Wagyu out there too. There is like, I mean, it's not all good. So yeah, I think once you got the retail food and service sector in that way, when they can be more honest and transparent about what they've got, that's going to be a step forward for us in the right direction too. The same story. I go and I encourage people to go and have Wagyu, and they get it from a butcher shop. And the same Wagyu I was saying just before that we went and tried, and I got it home and got the kids to try it, taste it first. It was awful, absolutely awful. It's almost becoming a bit of a rarity to have good Wagyu again now, and I think that's why I'm so fortunate, I suppose, that I know these bloodlines and different operations that I can pick and choose and say, yeah, can I go and buy some of yours because I know this stuff down the road is going to be garbage. But this is what happens too: is there's so many people jump on the bandwagon of Wagyu production, and then they work out within 5 or 6 years how hard it is because it's not easy. There's a lot of work involved in producing Wag. And then they fall off the bandwagon. In the meantime, they've created genetics that are awful, and they're still being utilised. And there's no education on that side of things for producers because Wagyu production is so different to any other bovine. When you're breeding Wagyu, you don't breed for that first generation. You've got to have at least 3 generations lined up because it can take 3 generations for an expression to come out.
so expensive to think about, right? That's like 9 years down the road, or maybe not 9 years, but a good five, right?
Potentially, and that's what I've found fascinating about Wagyu compared to any other breed that I've been involved with is, you think you've got something and you start breeding for it, and you've got this heifer's hit the ground. Once she's hit the ground, you've already got her progeny lined up. And I want to know where that direction is, and then her progeny's progeny. And by the time you find out whether that cross was right or not, and you find out that it was wrong, they've essentially been spreading the seed throughout your whole operation, and they're essentially non-performers, and then you've got to start again, and that's 3 generations that have been wasted.
It's devastating.
So that's why it is so incredibly important to know your genetics and when you're breeding and how to breed for it. And as I keep saying, this focus on maternal. The bulls are important too, but the ladies are really, really where the emphasis should be placed. Yeah.
That's why, with the American system, it is, I've talked to a lot of people about it, and they're like, it is really going to be about that farm. And it's going to be about, the branding of that farm and the consistency of that farm. Because, if you walk into a place and of that, you see that farm and it, and it's, you've had it before and it's always been good, you're going to go back to that. Those little people are going to kind of like attach to their little boutique favorites, and I personally love that. But how can, the way I see it with Australia is that maybe that they're helping support some of the stuff that we can't produce. Do you think that that's an issue? And I want to tread lightly here. I don't want to piss off American farmers by any means, ranchers, but do you think that there's more of a demand in the U.S. than that we can produce right now? Or do you think that there's something else? I'm just trying to think of why there is so much, Australian here in the U.S. And I'm just like, man, like, are we not producing enough, or what? Or is it different? Do people, there is different flavor profiles and things like that, but.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really good point. I think more than anything, the reason American Wagyu probably hasn't got to a scale, it has the capacity to get to a massive scale, more so than what Australia could probably produce. But I think the reasoning for it is because essentially there are no metrics for Wagyu. This we get back to USDA. Until that grading model is changed, and then you can finally see a benefit or a premium for producing Wagyu, then you're going to have more people come onto the bandwagon. I understand a lot too that in America and Australia, it happens here as well, is the generational side of things. We've produced Angus for 3 generations, we're never going to do anything. I understand that, and unfortunately, it's a little bit of a downfall for the industry because it's a perfect cross for one. I listened at a seminar the other day. I think I heard someone say there's 50 million Angus in America. 50 million. Why on earth is there not a bigger F1 market? And the beauty of it too is the fact that if you are a Wagyu producer and a small scale operation the way you are, if you want to be a Wagyu producer and a seed stock producer, there is your market. So make F1 bulls as high etage bulls as possible. It's not always about the numbers; it's about the genetics, because this is how they were developed. Produce bulls for F1 market. Then you get those bulls out there. You're getting carcass data back. You're lifting the industry numbers. And you're getting more Wagyu beef into people's faces. It's so simple in my mind, but it's not going to happen until a producer or an Angus producer, a Wagyu producer aren't going to be able to achieve that until USDA changes the metrics and enables us to have a premium for Wagyu beef.
I love that. You're so right. At least in my opinion, that F1 market could just totally explode. It's so funny when we show, like, you bring a normal person into our butcher shop and I show them like a F1 ribeye, they're just completely blown away. I'm like, I'm not even going to show them the A5. It's going to be too much. They're going to be like, I don't want that. That's wild. I can't even imagine that. But they're looking at this steak like, this is the best looking prime steak I've ever seen in my life. And I'm like, I know, it's freaking beautiful. And and the price is going to be a little bit more expensive than prime, of course, but it's not out of the picture, out of the question. It's not $200 a pound. No. And so I honestly, yeah, and you're getting it in front of all these people, and imagine just like walking into like nice grocery stores and they've got all this F1 and this beautifully marbled ribeyes and New York strips and everything. Yeah, it would totally take over. But it is funny. You're right. There's no way to I don't know, like, judge it or grade it correctly. Not a ton of incentive, I guess, to do it yet until they come up with a different grading scale. Is that kind of what you're saying? So people can actually like understand or sell it that way. It just seems insane to me right now.
One of the most amazing things I've seen in America, from a production level, all the way through, it was probably Booth Creek. So Booth Creek Wagyu up there in Kansas, went and visited them in September, and yeah, know their genetics inside out. It's just pretty impressive operation that they've got there. But what I found fascinating was when they took me to the butcher shop in Manhattan there. We walked in, and there was a lovely young lady there who, as soon as we walked in, she got two pieces of Denver out and started cooking them. And that smell, the whole smell, as soon as you sometimes when you walk into butcher shops and all you can smell is meat sort of thing, but they'll walk in there and smell Wagyu cooking. And I was like, we were onto something here already.
You hooked them. You hooked them right now. Yep.
Exactly. And so while I'm walking around with Raylan looking at all this beautiful meat in the freezers, well, not the freezers, the fridges, and then we were just brought over and served some Wagyu, and it's a rarity for me now, and I'm fortunate that I get to eat so much Wagyu all over the world. But that there was a piece of sirloin there that what I call them is a beef Malteser. I don't know if you guys have Maltesers over there in America, but they're like a little chocolate ball that explodes. And
Yeah.
yeah, and so I had this piece, and it was that flavor that came through with that was just how it's sort of like that mouth feel, and the whole lot was just insane. The flavor was amazing, and I remember actually I looked at Rail and said, "Look, I've got goosebumps. Like this is so rare." And anyway, and then I said, so I jokingly said, "What is this?" And she said, "Oh, we'll go and have a look at the packet." And on the back of the packet is a QR code that brings up their pedigree. Yeah, and I mean that to me is full transparency and quality assurance. Is that when you can go to any one of those steaks in that fridge, pick it up, look at the back of the packet. It has the DMP. It has all the information. They sell all their beef based on a DMP percentage, which I think is fantastic. Essentially, it's an even better grading model than Australia's got, I suppose. But they're selling it based on that percentage, and that they can market it better and inform the public, and it's all there on the back of the packet. It's a very impressive operation, Booth Creek, definitely.
Cool. Yeah. We got to chat more with those guys. I think we met them at the conference that we met at the
Yes.
or American Wagyu Association conference. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
they were there.
Yeah. No, they're incredible operation, and I think they'll be at the forefront of Wagyu production for a long time to come.
Yeah.
Yeah, the infrastructure, the genetics, the passion, the drive, the everything. It's just it's an unstoppable force.
That's kind of I think what the U.S. the American Wagyu is good at right there is that like we kind of talked about it's boutiquey and this is where it's from and this is like our thing and people can kind of pick their different flavors and if they like this they like Booth Creek because they can see all this stuff and they like the flavor they're going to go back and I think that's a cool thing for a lot of potential Wagyu producers to do in the future is like try to get up to that point and share that story and to have all the information back there. That's that transparency that just helps so much because people looking at everything like now you can shove that into someone's face who's like, oh, well, Wagyu isn't real. But like actually it comes from this ranch. This is the genetics. This is traceable all the way back to Japan. I mean, right there,
It's
just shuts everybody up.
but even the saleability of it too. Like I was talking to them, and they were saying that when they market the beef into those freezers, that they'll put it in 10% increments. So you get your 20s to 30s, 30s to 40s, 40s to 50s sort of thing, and then obviously the higher they go up, the more expensive it becomes. So they said what they find now with their clients or consumers that come in, they try and go and find the highest percentage to point of that range before they have to go to the next one because then that's the next step up in value. So they go and try to find that like it's almost a competition or a race to try and find the highest percentage of that bracket.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
it's fun.
yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
People do like people do like that the finding like the highest percentage. There is something about that people really like. If we had like A5 BMS 9 and BMS 11, I mean everyone's gonna go for that 11, even though the 9 might be even a little bit more palatable for those people. But they're gonna want to go for that. It's kind of funny. It's so true.
Yeah. That's what I'm finding so much too. Like, this is the emphasis I'm really trying to push out there with producers is that it's I don't know. They've got this thing in their head that they want to try and breed the next highest marble score, the next biggest eye muscle area, the next the hot carcass weights, all that sort of thing. And it to me it's a detriment to the industry because why do we need to have these massive numbers? Like, I mean, I had a really good experience last year in Melbourne. Went out to dinner with some Wagyu producers, and it was a Wagyu steakhouse. It was just dedicated to nothing but Wagyu. Very expensive, but it was amazing. But so we had a waiter come around with a trolley, and he had all the steaks in there that you got to view them, and there was Miyazaki's, there was Kobe, there was any type of there was lots of Japanese steak, but then they had some Gina Reinhardt F1, they had Mayora, Stanbroke, all the different Australian Wagyu as well, and so we get to compare that. You get to compare Japan and Australian production. And then so we decided to have a tasting test of our own sort of thing, like a flavor profile runoff. And so we selected two Japanese steaks and the Gina Reinhardt F1. And yeah, we did a blind study as such. And they came out, and the F1 came out on top. The flavor. It was the one we. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I don't doubt it. I love having some A5. I love having a couple little bites. It's freaking amazing. It's like it's a different experience. But every time, like we say it, I want to eat. I want to eat a steak, and I just want to just get a beautiful F1 cross.
Yes.
Like it's just unreal. Like a crazy marbled F1 cross is one of the best steaks you could eat. Like I love a New York too. That's what I'm going for. But
I'm a Zabison girl all the way.
yeah, of
Yeah.
course, of course. But we sell out of those. Like literally, I can't grab any from our meat case because we sell out of the Zabs like so fast. I gotta like hide them in the corner just to take them
That's
home.
it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I think that's the other thing too, is there's so much education that has to be done on how to eat Wagyu because it's not designed to be eaten in a Western fashion like the way we do it with our steak and three vegetables. That's not what it's supposed to be eaten like. So that's what I mean with these massive marble scores and eye muscle areas. We're trying to feed the Western world, sort of. They've got their own ways of doing things. But we're trying to feed the Western world, and the Western world does not eat Wagyu the way it's designed to be eaten.
Exactly. So if you're cooking an American Wagyu zabuton versus an Australian Wagyu zabuton, how would you like are they going to taste different? And like because I think a lot of people like this. I guess this is what I hear. Is like Japan is the highly marbled. Uh, the U.S. is the kind of like the F1 cross the beefy and the buttery, and then Australia's kind of in between there. But is that still true with all the different crosses that we have and all the different feeding types and everything like that? And can you really tell the difference between a U.S. and an Australian? Is the terroir going to be that much different? I mean, how in your eyes, like what's the difference in the flavor between
Okay. I've got to be diplomatic here too. Because I've grown up on Australian, I suppose I do have a preference for it. I have seen in the last 2 years, I think the first time I went to America and tried American Wagyu, I thought it tasted like corn. It was just corn to me. And,
we love corn over here. I love
yeah,
it.
and that's it. Like, I mean, you feed so much corn to Wag over there too. And so I suppose that's probably why it had that flavor profile for me. But the last, I'm going to say 3 trips that I've been over there, the Wagyu flavor has tripled. It was some of the. No, I'm going to say that is the best steak I've ever had is in America. So yeah, I think it's hard to really say what causes it all. Like, I mean, to me, I know in my mind that what takes the cake for flavor profile to me all boils down to genetics. Like, I've asked the question of my mentors before, like, what ratio do we place on this, genetics versus nutrition? Repeatedly, I've been told 70% genetics, 30% nutrition. So, and this is where the emphasis placed on these prefectural lines to ensure flavor profile, because The genetics that are being most heavily utilized at the moment, that are for terminal traits, as we're saying, that increasing eye muscle, marbling, and hot carcass weight. Those genetics that are quite popular at the moment are actually determines that they don't pass on flavor, they retract flavor. So that's the buy off essentially, sort of thing. Is like if you're trying to increase your scoring, your marbling, and your eye muscle and everything, you will lose out on flavor. So that's where, and there is obviously, as I say, different prefectural bloodlines that enhance it or they detract it. And that's why you have to have a continual rotation and balance of both maternal and terminal traits so that you can ensure that flavor profile. You've still got good genetic diversity within your females, and then you can continually move forward for a consumer satisfaction level.
I hear a lot that it's 50% genetics, 50% feed. I think, a lot of people really still focus on the feed, which is very, very important. So I hear that a lot. But you just said 70% genetics, 30% feed. And I feel like it's starting to get that way, like the genetics, obviously, we all know the genetics are so very, very important, obviously. But yeah, I could see it how it could be that 70-30 to the feed. Even the feeding is very important, but I mean, if you start off with amazing genetics and bloodlines like you're talking about, you're going to have a better opportunity to have better beef at the end of the day.
Well, that's it. I mean, at the end of the day, you can have both. You can have both, but but the most important part about it is your genetics. You must breed for blood, because if you breed, anyone can be an accountant and breed for numbers and make bigger numbers and all that. That's easy. That's the easy game. You have to understand genetics and what genetics capacities and roles are in place there. And it is, like, don't get me wrong, I am a Wagyu nerd and I focus and live and breathe this on a daily basis, and I've been doing it for 12 years and I will never stop learning, ever. It'll as my dad always said, you can be in the beef industry your whole lifetime and only learn 2%. But this is what I think. I'm so fortunate to have all these incredible mentors all over the world that are helping me, and we bounce the ideas off each other's sounding boards, and we get down to little specific details. Like, once we've done this cross, you're not going to see the result of that genetic expression for at least 3 generations, and you have to breed this way for that genetic expression to come out. It is such an art and science all rolled in one over a very long period of time, and it's not something that people can pick up on overnight. It takes generations. Well, I think even mentors that I've got, from Japan, that's generational knowledge, and they're still learning. It's we'll never get to the end of it. There is no end game.
That's a good. I mean, I like that. I like that. That you said that, because there's so much more to grow with Wagyu, and even with me just saying that Japan is the buttery and the U.S. is the beefy buttery and Australia is somewhere between. I feel like that's such outdated information with how we can produce cows, or how we can produce these cattle these days, with all the different crosses, from full bloods to F1 crosses to the feeding programs. I mean, all that stuff, like, they're very similar. Of course, they're going to be fed things that are local to that area, and so that can enhance or adjust the flavor and things like that. But there's so much more to learn, and we're learning so much more. And I'm so glad that you are on here to talk about Australian Wagyu, because for me, I've never really dived this deep into it. I've done a lot of research on it, but it's really interesting to hear your thoughts on it. As someone who's come to the U.S., who works with U.S. producers, who works with Australian producers, who has mentors in Japan. I mean, this has been fascinating to just learn a little bit more, and hopefully bridge some of the gap between the U.S. versus Australia. Because if we can work together and utilize what we do best, I mean, let's just get more people eating Wagyu and get in front of a lot more people, because that's just going to help every single producer in Australia and in the US.
Well, I think, and that's it too. I think, this whole competition standpoint between each other is garbage. For one, it needs to be taken out immediately, because at the end of the day, we are still actually in competition with chicken and pork and lamb, and we're in protein competition with these people, all these other species. So we need to be able to work together to not only keep beef as the prime protein, but keep Wagyu on top of that wheel of prime protein. So yeah, that's where I'm at, and we need to collaborate to do it. We can't be off in our own little corners of the world and trying to do it. I mean, we can, but we just won't get there fast enough. Utilize each other's connections and knowledges, and we learn from everybody all over the world, and put it all together, correlate it all, work out a system that works for the world.
Absolutely. All right, here, last question, because I'm always interested in this and Wagyu around the world. So if the U.S. and Australia are at that number 2, who's behind that in Wagyu production? Who's coming in third place?
That's a really good question. I don't really know. I'd imagine probably South America. I think there's a fair bit going on down there at the moment. And I mean, Europe's taking off as well.
Yeah, I just saw something about this Italian Wagyu beef that I've never even associated Wagyu in Italy, but I was just like, oh, this is cool. I'm sure it's there, but
yeah, it's actually really interesting geographically on my website. So whenever someone views my website, I get a ping to tell me that someone's on there and where they are in the world. And it's really interesting to see that on a world map sort of thing. There's so much happening in Europe, but I had one the other day from Singapore, from India. Saudi Arabia is looking at it. It's very interesting to see like people all over the world coming to my webs. Not that I'm a massive producer anymore, but obviously with a bit of an identity out in the industry now, that people are jumping on my website, and I get to see it's like, okay, we're getting a bit of traction over here on this side of the world. It's pretty cool to see. Yeah,
it's growing. It's such a freaking fast growing industry right now, and so yeah, we're gonna see it just uptick. And what about South Africa? I hear that a lot too. That's a good one. But
yeah. No, I've met a few South Africans came over for a conference in Australia a few years ago, and yeah, they were on point. They knew their stuff.
That's awesome. Well, hey, Jessie, how can people get in touch with you? Because I really do like your take on Australian and the U.S., and you're very well traveled, and I feel like you have a good grasp about the Wagyu industry. So how can people get in touch with you to work with you in 4C Consultancy?
Absolutely. So my main point of contact, I suppose, is through my website, 4cconsultancy.org. I mean, I'm on Facebook quite a lot. I probably do need to get a little bit more out there social media wise, but I seem to be in a constant state of jet lag lately. But it's I mean, I've tried to attend as many industry events as possible. Off to CattleCon next month. So yeah, it's pretty exciting to go and see that. But yeah, there's I mean, the thing is, obviously, with all my clients and people who want to connect all over the world, as the time zones are a bit difficult. So then you've got technology, people trying to call my mobile, and that doesn't work on America coming to Australia. And it's like, yeah, so it's sort of nearly, if you want to get in touch with me, it's either through Messenger or my website, or find me on Facebook. That's about it.
Yes. What was your website one more time?
www.4cconsultancy.org.
Okay, that work. Okay, nice. Whoa, Jessie, thank you so much today for giving us the time. I know you're super jet lagged, just got back from the States, and I really appreciate your time and your expertise on Australian Wagyu, and even some about the U.S. markets too. I know you're very well versed in both, and so you're a great resource for us. And I hope we can have you back on and chat a little bit more as things get even more connected between the U.S. and Australia. Hopefully we can keep that passion project going, because I think that's really important to work together and to make Wagyu just stronger. Like you said, competing against all the other proteins, not against each other. Like that's the best thing.
We have to be prime protein number one.
Yes, more people eating Wagyu. Let's just get that F1 cross program going here in the States, and just get it out there, man. I totally agree with that.
Exactly. No, it's been an absolute honor and a privilege. Thank you very much for asking me. I'm more than happy to come back anytime. I've got so much more I could talk about.
Love it. Well, yeah, maybe we'll have you on after we go to CattleCon and see what that's all about. That'll be
Sounds like a plan. Too easy.
I love it. Well, thank you, Jessie. We'll chat with you soon, and we'll sign it off for the Meat Dudes.
Okay, appreciate it. Thanks, Evan. Talk to you, man.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.